What if you could keep all of your add-ons updated from inside of Blender so you never have to re-download them again? I know this is something that people really want. In fact, I've had a few different people come to me with proposals of like creative ways to keep all of my add-ons updated automatically. I know that there are some add-ons that already do this. There are actually some like GitHub repositories for helping add-on developers add auto-update features to their projects, which is something I might consider doing. But basically, a new blog post has been put on the Blender website informing people about the Blender extensions platform. But what does this mean? What's it referring to? Well, basically, it's kind of what you think. In theory, it's a place where add-ons can be stored that people will be able to connect to through Blender to auto-update their add-ons. But also, I think the proposal goes a little bit further than that as well, where it also acts as a place where people can discover new add-ons and also like asset libraries, themes, and different extension types of data that people will be able to share with each other. But it won't be a free-for-all. It'll be like a more curated kind of reviewed experience where everything that will be included on the extensions platform will need to comply to a set of guidelines. So we're going to have a little look through that now, a little read through the blog post, and then maybe we can share some opinions about it. So taking a look here, earlier this year, Blender chairman Ton Rosendahl published a roadmap mentioning a need to investigate useful ways Blender could connect to the internet. One of the key features was to have a way to automatically get updates for Blender add-ons. This document dives deeper into that topic. Let's have a quick look at that roadmap. The section of interest here is Blender and Internet. A core principle of Blender is that it does not require the internet to work. The Blender developers remain strongly committed to providing a complete offline user experience. Optionally, however, Blender should be able to connect to the web for additional features to work. For example, signaling a user of new releases, updating add-ons, browsing asset repositories, sharing data with others, or set up collaborative environments. That's all very sensible. Blender will start a new module for this, name to be defined. Meta is getting too many different meanings. Yeah, I think the word meta has been a bit overused now. I'm pretty sure the Facebook company actually tried to use the word Blender for a project not too long ago. I might be wrong about that. It's getting a bit annoying. A dedicated website and server on blender.org will be set up for proof of concepts and rolling out online features. Okay, so that's what we're seeing now with the Blender extensions platform. Let's go back and have a look. A necessary stepping stone to get the latest Blender add-ons without having to leave Blender is having a public listing of quality add-ons backed and maintained by the Blender community. This, we propose, will become possible on the new Blender Extensions BE platform. To live at extensions.blender.org. Now, this is not available at the time of recording this. If you actually go here, you'll see that the site can't be reached. Now, this already sounds really cool in theory because everyone loves accessibility, but obviously there are going to be some more details about this because it's not just going to be like, you know, an open system for everyone to throw their stuff on. So let's read a bit more details about like the purpose. The purpose of BE is to serve Blender users, helping them to discover and download add-ons, themes, key maps, and asset libraries entirely within the free and open source spirit. BE will only offer GNU GPL compliant software or CC BY share-alike compatible content. No commercialization will happen in the platform. It aims to be attractive for artists and add-on developers to freely share their work on blender.org, even if they choose to be using third-party services such as Gumroad, Blender Market, or Patreon to generate revenues with the same or similar extensions. Read more about that in the Addon Policies section below. So basically, if there's anyone like me who makes like a variety of things, we have like commercial products, free products. If you want to take any of the free GNU GPL compliant add-ons, for example, like Halt Tools will be one of them, that would be appropriate for this, where it's saying that even if I had it available on platforms like Gumroad and Blender Market, it could also be placed on here, provided that it complies to the add-on policies, which we'll get onto in a little bit. Whenever the word extension is used in this document, one of the following is implied: an add-on, a theme, a key map, or an asset library. As we define the roadmap for this platform's prototype, we will focus on the add-on extension type, as it provides the most comprehensive range of features and requirements which can be applied to other extension types. So like add-ons are the main priority. Theoretically, this will be a great place to share like free and open source asset libraries as well, so that everyone will have access to like a nice range of artistic content, but add-ons are like the main use case for this, to like help people keep everything updated. This proposal has been reviewed by several stakeholders, including the people behind similar independent initiatives such as Blender Market and Polyhaven. So that's a sentence to raise some credibility in this blog post. You probably already know what these two things are. Blender Market is a place where creators like us can sell our like products relating contributing to Blender, and Polyhaven is a free and CC0 open source repository for like HDRIs, textures, and models. So Polyhaven already like fits very well into this proposal. So roadmap. Blender extensions could be split into the following milestones, each of which requires designing and implementing a particular set of features. Users should be able to discover, download, and rate various add-ons. So yes, even rating will be allowed in this. Developers should be able to upload, version, and manage their add-ons, as well as to have a way to openly communicate with their users. I think that's very important because it's very commonly the case, I'll tell you as an add-on developer, that users, I was going to say are stupid for a joke, but like that wouldn't have come across well. Sometimes users encounter issues which are very easily solved through like a 5-second Google search. Alternatively, sometimes they encounter more complex issues which are like more system dependent that the developer may or may not like have an answer to. So I think it's a very good thing to be able to have like a communication platform there so that if someone does encounter an issue that we know an answer to, we can just immediately go, look, that's your problem. And it's always nice to resolve those issues quickly so that other users don't come along and think, oh look, there's a really big issue here, when in reality it's not. Like it's just something that can be solved quickly, something that may be like a versioning conflict or a system dependent issue, or in some cases a conflict with other add-ons. Now add-on conflicts do happen sometimes. Like it's only happened with me once actually. Like the new modular workspaces add-on, which I'm really happy about. There's one really weird quirk where the asset browser button that gets appended to the 3D view menu above the kind of end toolbar does not get appended correctly if the user also has the Blender Kit add-on installed. I'm not sure why. I haven't looked into the code, but it's only specifically that add-on that it doesn't work with. I mean, I think I'm doing everything the correct way. There's just like a menu thing and we do .append and then we just add the button to it there, but for some reason it just doesn't work with Blender Kit. So basically it would be nice to like have a place where we could communicate that to people, or maybe even if there was a zone that says like potential conflicts where we can actually like inform people, okay, well look, these are two perfectly fine and functional add-ons by themselves, but sometimes like this may happen in these specific versions. So it like, you know, having like little places where we can communicate those things might actually be useful on a platform like this. Because I imagine that may be a thing as well. There may be multiple add-ons trying to provide the same solutions to like the same problems, but just in slightly different ways. For example, before the asset browser came along, there have been quite a few add-ons which kind of add their own asset browsing functionalities. What if the user prefers one of these over the other? You know, like what's to say that one is better than the other? Some may provide more functionality than the default asset browser, and maybe these may be appropriate for the Blender extensions platform, but if they are trying to solve the same problems, then maybe there'll be like a conflict there in some of the functionality. So like these are just some things that may be considered. I wonder if the review process for this platform may try to like not have duplicate solutions to certain like workflow problems, in which case maybe there might be a bias there. I don't know. I'm not saying like any of this is like certain or that they should or should not do anything. I'm trying to encourage a discussion here, like just pulling some thoughts out of my head. So yeah, if you have any views about that, then just, you know, write them down in the comments. Give me that engagement. Anyway, number 3 on this roadmap, a team of reviewers from the Blender community should be able to help Blender Foundation staff with the task of maintaining overall quality and trustworthiness of the listed add-ons. Sensible. However, we do need to be careful there of like community bias as well. Number 4, Blender itself should be able to access the add-ons listing via an API, making it easy to browse, install, and upgrade add-ons. Yes, brilliant idea. I think that'll be great. Each milestone is framed from the point of view of its stakeholders, such as Blender users in the first one, developers of the extensions in the second one, and Blender staff and reviewers in the third one. So yeah, we will consider the 4th milestone out of scope for the moment, being the API. Blender using the extensions listing on its own is something that is planned for the future and should be kept in mind, but is not the focus of this article. Basically, just get the functionality up and running. They'll focus on integrations and kind of streamlining that later on. Public listing. So this is how things will actually look on the platform. An add-on listing is a web page at extensions.blender.org/addons/awesome add-on with a description of add-on functionality and a way to download the latest version of it. Now I want to make an add-on called awesome add-on. Can I claim that? Unless it already exists. Depending on the extension type, the URL changes, e.g. a theme would be located at extensions.blender.org/themes/awesome theme. Okay, it makes sense. Side note about that, I do actually have my own custom theme. It's a bit darker than the regular one, so maybe I'll put mine on there. I get comments from people asking like, oh, why is your theme different? Where can I get it? And I have to point people to my Kurt's defaults like Gumroad page, but also it might have changed because did I include it in the modular workspaces? I might have done. It's hard to remember exactly where my most recent version of the theme is, so it might be better for me to put it on this extensions platform when it's ready. Each listing item should feature a unique name, comprehensive description, supported versions and license, download link, links to external documentation, the category and tags, ratings, and ways to report the add-on or abuse. I guess that comes in different forms. Like if there's a way to communicate with users, then there should should be a way to report that, but also to report the add-on separately. To certain types of extensions, such as key maps and themes, some of the above mentioned information is not applicable. Okay, so like here's a wireframe, they call it, of an example add-on. You have like a picture, it shows like what version it is, where the documentation is, the license, the description, and then some reviews by people. And then here's an example of how like the list of extensions will look, where you can filter by type, and then like you can search for them, and then go and grab more information. And it shows immediately there kind of like what category or tag it is, and then the version of Blender it works with. So yeah, I think that layout's pretty cool. Maybe some ways to improve that, to kind of like show more on the screen, or to give a better representation of the different categories in a way that kind of feels more expressive or exciting for people, rather than just like a regular list. But this is a roadmap, like they can make it more exciting in the future. Supported Blender versions. In case of an add-on, the lowest compatible version could be passed out of the add-on's info, such as the init.py, and the highest compatible version could be indicated by the extension developer manually. Okay, okay. In the add-on code, we usually put like the active version, which I guess would be the highest. So would that require a change where we just put the lowest version like at the bottom? I mean, this is how I've been doing it, where like if I like work on Biogen version 10, I'll put like 3.3 as the version, because that's the one I've been developing it for. But if that works with like 3.2, should I be putting 3.2 in the version? Because that's like the lowest compatible. So maybe I'll need to kind of read up a bit more about that. Basically, when I make add-ons, I develop them for the active stable version that I'm using, and then indicate that in the code to show I know that it works with this version specifically because that's what I've developed it for. It may or may not work with previous or future versions, but this is the guarantee I've made it for this version. Uploading a new add-on. To create a new add-on page on the Blender extensions platform, one needs to upload an archive, so a zip file containing the add-on files. Okay, that's what we usually do anyway. Depending on the type of the extension uploaded, some background processing is done before it's created. In the case of add-ons, the most important part is the init file containing the add-on's metadata, which is passed and used to create the listing. Okay, so there's like an automated process. It reads the add-on a bit. I think that's quite handy. In the case of a theme, a preview is generated based on the theme's XML. The slug used in the listings URL is generated from the extension's name and must be unique in combination with the extension type. Okay, so the slug is like a part of the URL which kind of acts as the identifier for the add-on. So basically, if I was to upload, is there an add-on I haven't mentioned yet that's GPL? No, I said Hold Tools, I said Biogen. Easy BPY is not an add-on, it's a module. Okay, we'll go back to Hold Tools. So if I uploaded Hold Tools, the slug will be like Halt-Tools or something in the URL. So we will grab that automatically. The slug can never be reused even if the previously uploaded extension using it gets deleted. Okay, that's interesting. Is that like a limitation or a safety method or a security thing? The process of updating an add-on is still being investigated. Feel free to share ideas. Okay, so they're open to feedback if you have any ideas. So now we get down to the kind of important stuff about what will actually be allowed on the platform, the review process, and the policies, the requirements, etc. The review process. It's vital for an extensions platform to be designed as a healthy and trustworthy ecosystem. That's fair because it's an official Blender platform. Their name will be attached to it. They have funding from different companies, so they don't want like weird stuff on there. They also don't want it to get like a bad press, because you know, like if the majority of add-ons on there weren't supported and just didn't work and it was all like bad ratings, and you know, it just wouldn't look very good. This means having a clear set of acceptable practices and review guidelines. Blender Foundation will establish and support a group of reviewers to manage and guide the process. Here is a proposal for the core policies for add-ons. Okay, so here's a wireframe of a sidebar for staff review where they can see a checklist of things to check and the approval status and a place to make notes. So add-on policies. The add-ons must be free and open source. Uploaded add-ons must be fully compatible with the GNU General Public License version 2.0 or 3.0. Obvious, we know this. We know that's how the GPL works. Add-ons created which interact with the Blender Python API need to adopt the GPL license. No surprises. The add-on must have an easy-to-read description mentioning everything it does. It must be abundantly clear from the extensions listing what functionality it offers, and Blender users should not be presented with unexpected experiences when they download and install the extension. That's common sense, like you just want it to say what it does. But does that mean we can't hide like Easter eggs and stuff in there? Like what if I wanted to have like a little thing where they press a button and maybe like a little spooky ghost appears and it says, hey, like, I'm kidding, like it's fine. I'm not disappointed. Okay, so for the content of the add-on, extension listings must comply with Blender Services conditions of use to be published. so they haven't published that yet, stating one may not use Blender's web services to do anything illegal, threaten, harass, harm, defraud, etc. Again, common sense and legal stuff. Extensions offered on blender.org should be fully functional, documented, and actively maintained products. So actively maintained products, that one might be a little bit subjective, because some add-ons are going to be untouched and yet much more longer life than other add-ons. Like, for example, Loop Tools, I think it's been around for a long time and it's worked with like most of Blender versions as far as I know. If there are add-ons like that which haven't been touched in ages, are they considered actively maintained even if they still work? So like, what's the measurement? Is it just if they don't work for like many versions that we consider them not actively maintained? Because I think that would kind of make sense. I suppose that's what maintained means. Like if it still works, then I guess it's maintained. Extensions should not require any external functional components that need to be downloaded from elsewhere. Yeah, that makes sense, because then it's not really self-contained in the Blender ecosystem. Extensions that need to connect to internet services outside of blender.org should offer access to these sites without additional restrictions, such as login or registration paywalls, etc. Understandable, because again, this is supposed to be like keeping everything free and open source and accessible, so it would be a bit weird if like a user downloads an add-on from the extensions platform and then faces like a paywall to access the functionality. Like, you know, log in to buy your license code. That would just be a bit weird. If the extension is a fork of another extension, the name must clearly distinguish it from the original and provide a significant difference in functionality and or code. So this is basically like, just don't have duplicates of add-ons. And if you do make a duplicate add-on, like change it significantly, because it's just going to be confusing for people. Extensions that are intended for internal or private use are only accessible to a closed user group or for distribution testing may not be listed on the platform. Yeah, again, like not really open and accessible. Linking to external funding platforms in the description, like Patreon, Gumroad, Blender Market, is allowed. It is not allowed to have an additional requirement such as registration, payments, or keys, blocking functionality to the extension. So this goes back to the paywall. Alternative clause, the extension description must disclose if/when payment is required to access any of its functionality. Okay, so acceptable code practices. This is the stuff that's going to be important for add-on developers and myself. Extension code must be reviewable. Obfuscated code or bytecode is not allowed. How to evaluate binaries is still an open question. Okay, so let me try and explain that if you've never done like this kind of Python stuff. Python files are readable, like .py files. You can open them in Notepad and just read all the code. Very open, like accessible. You can change it however you like. Obfuscated code or bytecode. So basically, a lot of programming languages compile into an obfuscated format, which is fast to run, but you can't exactly open it and change it. Python kind of does this in like a limited way, in the way that it makes these PyCache files or .pyc files, which I believe, and I may be wrong because I'm not a Python expert, if a PyCache file exists, it runs that instead of the regular Python file because it's faster by like a certain degree, but that's obfuscated. I believe, and this may not be true because again, I'm not an expert because I've never tested this. You could just like share the PyCache files rather than the raw Python files, and like the functionality would still be there. I don't know because I've never done that. In which case it wouldn't be modifiable. What I do is whenever I package up my add-ons, I like delete all the PyCache files because they're just auto-generated anyway on the user's end, and just transfer the Python file. So that's basically what it's saying. Like, just it must all be the reviewable code files. How to evaluate binaries is still an open question. I think that blend files like technically count as binaries as well. We'll get onto that a bit because in the add-on guidelines for like adding add-ons to Blender, they don't allow binaries such as .blend files, as it says. So if I click here, requirements for contributed scripts. So this is like the traditional guidelines if you wanted to get an add-on added to Blender. Inclusion of binary data files is to be avoided. .blend files, for example. I think this requirement may need to be removed or changed because like with the introduction of the asset browser, some add-ons are going to be like asset browser specific, in which case they may have to include .blend files for functionality. Also, there are certain types of data like geometry nodes trees which link to many other data types like objects which are included in the trees which have materials connected to them, and then like modifier stacks have multiple geometry nodes trees, and this isn't really stuff you can store in a file easily. Well, you can store in a file easily, it's called a blend file. So like for example, ByGen has moved to a content pack system where you can import these geometry nodes templates, but these are stored in a .blend file. We call it the official content pack. That's a core part of the add-on. It's not a particularly large file, but it does provide this core functionality where users can import the basic template or just choose to like import the modifier stack, which also imports the materials and the objects, etc., and then it kind of modifies them, relinks them depending on like what object was selected. So according to this requirement, ByGen isn't allowed on the platform, but I don't think that'll be the only one because again, like like I know other add-ons are kind of interacting with the asset browser in similar ways. And also, according to this proposal, .blender files will be allowed to be synchronized with Blender because it's also allowing for asset libraries to be downloaded and transferred. And asset libraries are collections of Blend files. So I think like for this platform, the guidelines may need a little bit of like a slight review just for this specific case, but we'll see what they say about it. Again, this is just a proposal and a roadmap. Extensions must be self-contained and not load remote code for execution. Yes, that's true. Again, this kind of calls back to having it all be reviewable, because if it loads remote code, you don't necessarily know what that code is before it's like obtained and run. So that's a security risk. Imagine, for example, that someone was hosting a server with like virus code, and there was an add-on that someone installs into their Blender, which obtains like a string of this from like this server. You don't know what it is before you get it, but it comes in and then it just runs it immediately. And that's a virus which is installed on your system. Extension must not send data to any remote locations without explicit authorization from the user. That's like a privacy thing. And again, you know, you could technically obtain data from people's files and then just send it elsewhere, you know, passwords, etc. So again, that's like a security practice. Extensions should avoid including redundant code or files. So basically, if you have files which aren't being used anymore, then just don't include them. It'll just be bulky and unnecessary. However, I do have a question about that one, because obviously I have created EasyBPY. It's a helper module, which I use to implement some functionality. It also makes it easier for me to write add-ons because I work in a very linguistic kind of abstract way. I don't really consider myself a programmer in the traditional kind of optimized efficiency form. I have like a lot of difficulty visualizing things like that. Call it neurodivergence if you like. But also when developing these add-ons like Biogen and Halt tools, I come up with ideas for functionality which I add to this helper module. So working on those projects also helps this other open source helper module project. Now, if I import that helper module, which I do in these add-ons use a variety of the functions in this helper module, but they don't use all of them. So would they consider those unused functions redundant code? I hope not, because then that would mean I would have to like split off and then delete all the functions which I don't use specifically for that add-on, and that means I'm going to have more work to do, and I'll have to have like a version of this helper module for every specific add-on, and then I might just get kind of bored of doing that and then not keep them updated. So I hope that that specific requirement isn't too strong, because it means that EasyBPY might get left behind, or I just won't feel up for keeping those add-ons updated on the platform. Also, I think it would be weird if it did exclude helper modules like that, because when we import modules like random and various mathematical modules which actually come with Python, we're not using all of the functions included in those modules. So I think it would be weird if that was excluded. EasyBPY is also not a big performance drain, especially not when compared to certain add-ons. So maybe I'll ask them about that, because like EasyBPY is a project I feel quite passionately about, and I know that a lot of people in the community do like it as well. It's also integrated in Serpens, the visual scripting tool. So I hope that, you know, if this comes along, I'm still allowed to package it with the add-ons, because otherwise it's just going to be like really annoying to work with. Extension must not negatively impact performance or stability of Blender. Okay, fine. And again, the extensions code must be compliant with the add-on guidelines. So again, like I said, these requirements are traditionally for if you wanted your add-on to be included in Blender. Like, you know, when you go to edit preferences and then add-ons, there's a collection of add-ons already there. So it makes more sense that there would be kind of more stringent guidelines for that. Although another thing I have concerns with is the style recommendations, because I hate standards. Call this maybe like an undiagnosed ADD thing, or again like a neurodivergence thing, I don't know. I hate a lot of traditional standards for how like code should be laid out. I do everything in region folds, so this is basically a way that I can kind of fold out different parts of the code so we can contain a lot of data in one code, but kind of have it like reading the contents of a book. Also, I like keeping my conditional statements very long and exposed in a way that it reads like a book as well. Again, that comes back to EasyBPY, where we use like very plain English functions to describe things. I know that a lot of other kind of programmers like to keep stuff really self-contained and like one-liners instead of like extended conditions, which I am not really into. I write code in a way that's easy for me to re-enter when I come back to the project. I outline this in a video on my second channel called Creativity Over Efficiency. It basically describes how I can move from like many artistic projects to technical projects like code and just like jump between them really quickly without much struggle, because they're always very easy to re-enter again. Because when you don't optimize things for efficiency, efficiency, even in terms of like writing things in a very certain compacted style, it's just much easier to re-enter it again. So basically what I'm saying is, in a long-winded way, I hope that the way I write code won't be prejudiced against, I suppose, by like the code review process, because then I'm just not going to upload it to the platform. But I try my best. Like I make it readable for me. I try and make it like really nice and laid out and kind of pretty. So I think it'll be fine. Basically, like in the past, I've had people come to me and say, you must adjust this so it complies to this specific standard. Here's a tool that does it for you. And I'm like, that's so annoying. Just bugger off. So I know some people might listen to that and say, well, you know, if you want it to be used professionally, then you need to comply to this thing. It doesn't take that much effort. But let me tell you, if you have the same kind of like attention thing, whatever's going on with me, where if something becomes so boring or unreadable, or if there's even like a small roadblock to your understanding when you come back to a project, you will just abandon it completely. It's not spite. It's literally just a mental block. It's just, I feel like it's the same reason why I can't do mental maths or something. And like why I like count, when I count numbers, I visualize like the face of a die, but there's a very specific way I do it. It's like very spatial. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's something about like the way I look at things, the way I read things. I don't know how to describe this. I'm just going on a massive tangent. Like this brain no work with standards. All right. Anyway, I think this is all interesting. The Blender extensions platform. Let me run through some like pros and cons, I guess. It's going to be good because it will help people find new add-ons. It will help people keep the add-ons updated. This is great because like if an add-on developer comes up with a new version, more people are more likely to download the update, even if they don't necessarily find the features interesting, because it takes less effort to download them. This may be a negative, I suppose, in the way that add-on developers largely also rely on donations, like for free projects. And if people download the add-ons through this system, then they are less likely to get donations because it won't be going through like a payment thing. On the flip side of that, add-on developers may receive fewer help requests, because if this system streamlines the installation process to do it automatically for users, then we won't have to get so many of those. However, the flip side of that is that if Blender doesn't design the system properly, if it doesn't work for every system, then we may receive more help requests relating to how this system installs the add-ons, if that makes sense. But that probably won't happen, and if that does, that'll be more of like a temporary thing, I expect, where they streamline the installation process for different systems. But I think really the main one out of those downsides would be the less likelihood of receiving donations. So say for example, when you download an add-on from me, you'll typically get it through like Blender Market, Gumroad, or GitHub. If you go through Gumroad, there's a chance to leave a donation. It's quite easy to do, but also you can also sign up to the mailing list as well, which means that you can receive future updates in regards to like new products and stuff. So there's a way to like kind of cycle back free users into donators and potential future customers. And like it's very, very difficult, of course, to like make free users paid customers in the future, but it's how we keep alive. So maybe the discoverability of the system, like having more new users find the add-ons, might make up for that. Maybe it won't. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But again, I'm not saying like this is a good or a bad system. There are some really good pros here. So yeah, I'll be interested in hearing what you think. This is probably a really long video now as well. I should probably wrap this up. Anyway, as they say on the blog post, they're welcome for feedback. So yeah, what was my feedback? Let's just sum this up. If you're getting community involved in the review process, lay out some guidelines to keep it objective, I would say. That's my feedback, rather than subjective. Also, for the guidelines for add-ons, maybe review the not allowing blend files in the add-ons, because again, moving towards its asset browser system, blend files may be an integral part of the add-on, such as the case for Biogen. Also, for the code redundancy thing, that's a good policy. I just want a bit more clarity on it for helper modules, because again, EasyBPY and my add-ons, they are complementary and they help each other to grow. So it would be kind of annoying and would stagnate the growth of both of these open source projects if like that wasn't allowed to be used. So yeah, that's all I would say. I'm interested to see how it will grow. So yeah, if you made it this far through the video, put like, I guess, a computer or a laptop emoji in the comments, because I suppose that's related to add-ons. Maybe consider checking out some of the other videos on my channel. We've got a range of Blender content, different artistic projects, tools and resources, news pieces, community roundups, where we take a look at like all the cool stuff happening in the community. You can also sign up to my Patreon, where you can get your name put permanently on this evolving piece of artwork that I show at the end of videos. You'll also be helping to support all of these projects as well. And speaking of tools and resources, maybe check out my store at codassault.online/store. I have add-ons for speeding up your startup workflow, for generative modeling, workflow tools and improvements. I've got procedural materials for your artwork, both free and paid, all sorts of different like artistic resources as well. So just have fun. So yeah, have a fantastic day, everyone. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you next time.